The sunlight filtered through the dusty windows of my grandmother's house, creating a dance of shadows and light on the attic floor. The smell of old wood and dust filled the air as I tried to organize the things that had remained untouched for years. It was a painful task, yet I felt compelled to do it. My grandmother had been a strong figure in my life, and her death left a void that seemed insignificant compared to the multitude of memories I had of her. "Emily, are you sure you want to do this alone?" Lucas, my childhood friend, appeared in the doorway, a worried expression on his face. He had always cared about me, especially now that I was dealing with loss. "Yes, I need to do this. No one else can understand how I feel," I replied, trying to smile in a way that I hoped would convey courage. Lucas had always been my support, and his presence comforted me. It was as if, even in the midst of sadness, I could find a glimmer of hope. "Okay, but if you need me, just call," he said, crossing his arms, still in the doorway. I knew he was concerned, but I didn't want him to feel powerless. I needed some time alone to process everything. I continued my task, pushing boxes and sentimental items aside. Old photos, broken toys, and books my grandmother loved were piled in a chaotic mountain. That's when I saw something different. Framed mirror, leaning against a dusty corner of the attic. The frame was ornate, with details that seemed almost supernatural. I felt a strange attraction to it, as if it were calling my name. "Lucas, come here," I called, curiosity overtaking me. He approached, a mix of confusion and a bit of apprehension on his face. "What is that?" he asked, looking at the mirror. "I don't know, but it looks special," I replied, running my hand along the frame. There was something mysterious about its presence, something that made me feel it had stories to tell. "I think I'll take it to my room." "Don't you think it's a bit weird?" Lucas asked, raising an eyebrow. "Weird or not, I need to know more about it. What else could be here that I don't know?" I had a feeling that the mirror could be the key to understanding more about my grandmother's life, and perhaps even my own story. As I carried the mirror, a chill ran through my body. It was as if a cold breeze had swept through the room. I tried to ignore it, thinking it was just the dust and heavy air of the attic. I went to my room and placed the mirror against the wall, observing it more closely. The surface was perfectly smooth, reflecting my face in an almost ethereal way. I decided to approach and look into the mirror. The first image I saw was of a young woman with long dark hair, appearing to be in a dark and misty environment. It was my grandmother, but so different from the way I knew her. Her gaze was distant, as if she were lost in sad thoughts. "Emily, what's happening?" Lucas's voice echoed behind me, breaking the spell. I turned around, my heart racing. I saw my grandmother. She looked so scared. I confessed, trying to process what had just happened. Vision left me unsettled. A strange feeling overtook me. "Maybe we should investigate this. It could be that the mirror has some connection to your family's history," Lucas suggested, his curiosity piqued. He had always been like that, a friend who jumped into the unknown alongside me. "Yes, I think we need to find out more about this," I replied, determined. "Tomorrow, let's go to the library and look for information about my grandmother and our family." "Perfect. Let's unravel this mystery together," he said, and I could see excitement in his eyes. At the same time, a shadow of worry settled in my heart. What else could the mirror show me? And what secrets were hidden in my grandmother's memories? The library was colder than I remembered. The smell of aged paper hung in the air as Lucas and I sat at the table, our eyes fixed on a pile of documents we had pulled from the shelves. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were about to uncover something that had long been hidden, something that could change everything I knew about my family. "Look at this," Lucas said, flipping through a yellowed folder. His voice was low, almost reverent. He paused on a page and ran his fingers over the letters as if he were touching something sacred. "There's a report here about a tragedy in your family. It talks about your grandmother's sister who disappeared." My heart raced. "Disappeared? What do you mean?" "I've never heard anything about this." The idea that there was a part of my family's history that had been kept secret was disturbing. "Calm down, let's read everything carefully," Lucas suggested, trying to calm me. He turned the page, and as the words began to reveal themselves, I felt a chill run down my spine. "Your grandmother's sister, Eliza, disappeared under mysterious circumstances. They say she was involved in something that the family did not approve of. The last time she was seen was on a stormy night near the lake on the property. With each word, a sense of déjà vu washed over me. The lake? I remembered hearing stories about it when I was a child, but I never bothered to ask more. And what happened after that? I asked, apprehensive. Lucas raised an eyebrow, his eyes shining with curiosity. It seems the family was devastated. Your grandmother, she never mentioned this to anyone, apparently. And the mirror, Emily? What do you think it has to do with all of this? I don't know, but the weight of the revelation crushing my chest. But I feel it's connected. Every time I look at it, I see flashes of my grandmother's life, but I can't understand what it means. After what felt like an eternity, we decided to head back home. The path seemed longer than usual, and the shadows in the trees appeared denser. I was restless, thinking about the images the mirror might reveal. When we arrived, the silence of the house was deafening. Do you want to look at the mirror again? Lucas asked hesitantly, noticing my hesitation. I don't know, I murmured, but curiosity was consuming me. I needed to understand. Come on, if you feel uncomfortable, I'll be here. You don't have to do it alone, he said, his gaze warm and encouraging. I took a deep breath and approached the mirror. The surface reflected more than just my image. It seemed to pulsate with its own energy. When I looked closely, a vision began to form. I saw a fight, a scene of rage and despair. My grandmother, younger, was standing there, her face twisted in pain as she argued with a shadowy figure. The surroundings were vague, but the tension was palpable. Emily, are you okay? Lucas's voice interrupted my concentration. He was by my side, concerned. You look pale. I saw something, I replied, my voice trembling. It was my grandmother. And there was someone with her. I can't understand what was happening. He looked at the mirror. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary to him. Maybe we should look for more information. This might be related to what we read in the library. Suggested, and I reluctantly agreed. But before we could discuss what to do next, something inside me longed to explore more. Lucas, what if the mirror can really show us the truth? What if the answers are there? He hesitated, but the determination in my gaze seemed to encourage him. All right, but let's be careful. We don't know what else might be hidden. In a burst of impulse, I took my grandmother as a beacon in the darkness. I needed to understand what had happened to Eliza. I needed to know if my grandmother had done something to protect her or if something darker was at play. And so, we decided to do a deeper search in the house. As we walked through the hallways of the house, the silence was almost deafening. What would we find? I didn't know, but I was ready to face whatever was hidden beneath the surface of the past. The daylight was beginning to fade when I sat down again in front of the mirror. My heart was pounding in my chest, and a chill ran down my spine. I knew I should stay away from it, that the visions it provided were disturbing and in a way dangerous. But curiosity was a powerful force, and Lucas, beside me, seemed just as eager to uncover the truth. Emily, we need to understand what's happening, he said, his voice firm. If we don't confront this head on, we'll never know what really happened to your family. I took a deep breath, trying to gather my courage. And what if I can't handle what I see? What if it's something I don't want to know? Lucas placed his hand on my shoulder. His touch was comforting. Sometimes facing our fears is the only way to free ourselves from them. I'll be here with you. With one last hesitant glance at him, I approached the mirror. The reflection of my face was there, but something more began to emerge at the edges of the image. The environment around me seemed to distort, and a dark mist started to emanate from the surface of the glass. I closed my eyes for a moment before opening them again and facing what was to come. When I looked once more, the scene changed abruptly. I was no longer in my room. Instead, I found myself in a dark place, as if I were inside a forgotten memory. The air was heavy and laden with an oppressive silence. Then, like a flash, a feminine figure appeared before me. It was a young woman with long, disheveled hair, looking at me with a mix of sadness and despair. Please, help me, she pleaded, her voice echoing like a distant whisper. I'm trapped here, and you're the only one who can set me free. My heart raced. Who are you? I asked, my voice trembling. What happened? I am your grandmother's sister, she replied, and the words seemed to vibrate in the air. I was forgotten, but I cannot leave. The curse that haunts our family keeps me trapped inside this mirror. The revelation hit me like a punch to the stomach. I had always known there was something dark surrounding my family's history. But I never imagined this sorrowful figure was such an integral part of it. Curse. What do you mean by that? Secrets have been buried, Emily, the woman said, her expression becoming more intense. Your grandmother made difficult choices to protect the family. The price was high. Truth must be revealed, or we will all be doomed to suffer forever. I felt a wave of emotions, fear, sadness, and a growing determination. How can I help you? I asked, already resolved to do whatever was necessary to uncover what really happened. The figure moved closer, and I felt an inexplicable connection with her. You need to research more about us. The mirror is the key, but you must be willing to face the pain that comes with this truth. Before I could respond, the vision began to distort, and I felt myself being pulled back to reality. With one last look at the woman, who now appeared more like a shadow, I screamed, but her voice echoed in my mind. The truth is the only way out. I woke up, gasping, back in my room. Lucas was by my side, worried. Emily, what happened? You were screaming. She said she's my grandmother's sister, I replied, still dazed, and that the truth needs to be revealed. Lucas frowned, processing the information. This is something we need to investigate further. We can't leave it like this. But what if the truth is too painful? I asked, feeling the weight of responsibility on my shoulders. Sometimes facing the pain is the only way to find peace, Lucas replied, gaze firm. We'll do this together. And so, we decided it was time to leave the house and look for more information about my grandmother's missing sister. But before we left, a soft whisper seemed to escape from the mirror. I looked at it again, hesitant, but curiosity pulled me once more. What else could be hidden there? The vision would become even more vivid, and my family's story was about to unfold before me, revealing secrets that perhaps were better left buried. But the search for the truth called to me, and there was no turning back now. The mirror seemed to pulse before me, as if it had a life of its own. The lights in the room reflected off its surface, creating a mesmerizing effect that made it hard to look away. My heart raced, and a mix of curiosity and fear flooded my body. Emily, don't you think you've seen enough for today? Lucas's voice interrupted my thoughts, but I couldn't tear myself away. The image of my grandmother, confronted by a dark entity, was still fresh in my mind. But I need to know more, Lucas. What's going on here? What did my grandmother really do? I felt that every answer was there, hidden beneath the surface of the mirror. He ran a hand through his hair, clearly worried. Think we should take a break. These visions are getting more intense, and I don't want you to get hurt. I can't just ignore this. My grandmother hid something very important, and I'm so close to finding out. The tone of my voice sounded more determined than I actually felt. I looked again at the mirror, where the image of my grandmother was fading into shadows, as if she were trying to escape something terrible. I need to see one more time. Lucas sighed, but didn't try to stop me. He knew that, no matter how much he wanted to, he couldn't pull me away from what I considered my destiny. Just be careful, please, he said, his concern evident. I approached the mirror, feeling the electricity in the air. Grandma, I murmured, as if I could reach her somehow. As I looked into the surface, a new vision began to take shape. The scene changed rapidly, and now I saw my grandmother in a dark environment, the same nebulous place I had seen before. The entity, a shadow shrouded in mystery, approached her. I could feel the fear radiating from her, but at the same time, there was a determination in her stance. You cannot keep me here forever, my grandmother said, her voice resonating in the room. I did what I had to do to protect them. A wave of despair washed over me. What did she mean by that? What had she done? The entity responded with a deep, echoing laugh. Do you think your choices have no consequences, woman? What you have done cannot be undone. You and your family are bound to this fate. No, I refuse to accept this. The image of my grandmother seemed to struggle, but the entity was powerful, and the scene began to distort again. I was about to be pulled into the mirror, as if reality were disintegrating around me. Panic overtook me, and I screamed, Lucas! He was by my side, holding my arm. Emily, what are you seeing? His voice was tense, and I realized he was also worried about what might happen next. My grandmother. She's fighting against something that might have to do with her sister. My mind was buzzing with questions. We need to know what happened. She made a pact. We need to find out how to undo it. Lucas hesitated, finally agreed. All right, but we might need help. What do you think about talking to someone who understands more about this? A specialist in paranormal phenomena, perhaps? The idea made my heart race. Do you think that could help? I was aware that we were entering dangerous territory, but the need to understand what was happening was greater. I don't know, but we have to try. We can't do this alone, Lucas replied, his gaze firm and determined. Then let's look for someone, I said, already feeling a bit more hopeful. Someone who can help us unravel these secrets. The next morning, we decided to meet with a specialist named Sarah, who had a reputation for helping people solve paranormal mysteries. As we made our way to her house, my stomach was in knots, a mix of anxiety and anticipation. What would she say about the mirror? More importantly, what would she say about the entity that seemed so closely linked to my family? As soon as we arrived, we were greeted by a woman with a piercing gaze and a warm smile. She invited us into her living room, decorated with candles and mystical objects. I sense a very strong energy coming from you, he said, watching us closely. What brought you here? We found a mirror that belonged to my grandmother, I explained nervously. And ever since we found it, strange things have been happening. Sarah leaned forward, intrigued. Mirrors are powerful. They can act as portals. What did you see? Visions of my grandmother and an entity confronting her. She seems to be guarding secrets, I replied, feeling that finally someone could understand the gravity of the situation. Sarah closed her eyes for a moment, as if tuning into the energies around us. This mirror could be a representation of an unresolved past. The presence you feel may be a manifestation of pain and secrets that your family carries. Lucas and I exchanged glances, our determination renewed. Now we knew we were just beginning to unravel the web of mysteries that surrounded us. The answers were before us, and we were ready to face them, no matter the cost. The atmosphere in the room was charged with a strange, almost electric energy. As Sarah organized the objects needed for the seance, I felt my heart race with both anticipation and fear of what we might discover. Lucas was by my side, his presence a foundation amid the whirlwind of emotions. Are you ready for this, Emily? He asked softly, but there was concern in his eyes. I'm not sure if I'm ready for what we're going to find, I replied, swallowing hard. But it's necessary. I need to know the truth. Sarah, sensing our tension, smiled reassuringly. I understand that this can be frightening, but remember, we are here to seek answers. The mirror is just a means of communication. What matters is the intention with which we connect. With that, she lit some candles and placed her hands on the table. Lucas and I joined her, forming a circle. I looked at the mirror, which was covered by a cloth, and a wave of anxiety washed over me. The idea of looking into it again made me uneasy, but also determined. Let's begin, Sarah said, closing her eyes. Focus on the memories, the feelings that the mirror has evoked in you. Allow the energy to flow. Took a deep breath, trying to calm my mind. Closed my eyes and envisioned my grandmother's sister, tragic figure who intrigued me so much. The environment around me began to waver, and a sensation of vertigo overtook me. When I opened my eyes again, I was no longer in the room, but in a dark and misty place. The light was dim, but I could see a figure in front of me. It was her, my grandmother's sister. Her gaze was filled with pain and despair. Emily, she whispered, her voice echoing like a lament. Why did you come? You shouldn't be here. I want to understand, I replied, my voice trembling. What happened to you? Why did you disappear? She hesitated as if struggling against invisible chains. The truth is a burden, my dear. Your grandmother made difficult choices. She thought she was protecting you and the others, but it cost a lot. It cost me my freedom. Her words cut like a knife. I could feel her sadness, pain accumulated through generations. But I need to know the details. What happened? What did your sister do? What did my grandmother do? The figure began to blur, and the environment grew even denser, as if something was interfering. Be careful, Emily. Entity doesn't want you to know. It will try to stop you. At that moment, a shadow approached, a heavy presence that made the air feel thicker. I could sense its rage, a biting cold enveloping me. My grandmother's sister turned to the shadow, face now filled with fear. "Leave here. Leave her alone." "You shouldn't have come," the entity said, its voice echoing like a roar. "The truth is not for the weak. You cannot handle what you are about to discover." I felt a pressure in my chest, as if the shadow was trying to suffocate me. "I have to know," I shouted, my voice echoing in the darkness. "I will not back down." And suddenly, everything fell apart. The darkness dissipated, and I found myself back in the room, breathing heavily. Lucas was beside me, a look of concern on his face. "Emily, you were screaming," he said, holding my arm. "What happened?" I saw my grandmother's sister," I replied, still dazed. "She was trying to warn me about the entity. She said the truth is a burden and that my grandmother made choices to protect us." Sarah, overhearing our conversation, looked at me seriously. "This is just the beginning, Emily. The entity is manifesting more aggressively because it fears you will uncover the truth. We need to be careful." "But I can't stop now," I declared, feeling a growing determination. "I need to understand what really happened. No matter what the entity does, I will not give up." The silence that followed was thick, and the tension was palpable. I knew I was approaching an abyss. Curiosity and the need to understand my family's secrets were stronger. The mirror, with its hidden truths, was calling me. I was determined to answer that call, no matter the cost. Cold of the attic seemed to penetrate my bones as I prepared to face the mirror once more. Tension in my chest grew with each step I took towards it. The decision to confront the mysteries surrounding me felt like standing at the edge of an abyss. And I didn't know if I was ready for what I was about to discover. "Emily, are you really sure about this?" Lucas asked me, his voice filled with concern. I just nodded, swallowing hard. When I looked into the mirror, the surface began to ripple like boiling water. An intense chill ran down my spine, and before I could pull back, I was yanked into the vision. The environment around me transformed, and I found myself in a familiar room, with a dark air. All the members of my family were gathered. Their expressions were ones of pain and despair. "We can't let this happen again." A woman's voice echoed through the space. I immediately recognized it as my grandmother's. She stood surrounded by familiar faces, but with a sadness in her eyes that I had never noticed before. The weight of guilt seemed to hang over everyone there, like a dark cloud. "The curse, it haunts us," doubted a man, who I believed to be a distant uncle. Panic filled the room, and I wanted to scream to intervene, but I was paralyzed. What exactly was happening? What did the curse mean to them? Suddenly, the atmosphere shifted, and the shadowy figure I had seen before began to materialize in front of me. The entity was there, and its presence was oppressive. "The truth must be revealed," it said, its voice echoing as if coming from all corners of the room. And then, as if I were in a movie, the vision dissolved, and I found myself once again in front of the mirror. But now, something was different. The entity had revealed its true face. It was my grandmother's sister, the woman who had disappeared. Her gaze was one of despair, and her words pierced through me like sharp knives. "Emily, I am trapped here because of your grandmother. She made a pact to protect me, but it came at a price. You need to free me." My hands trembled as I tried to process everything. "How can I help you?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. My grandmother's sister looked at me, and the pain in her eyes was palpable. "You must make a choice. To free me, you must sacrifice your memories of this family. Or you can choose to stay here, part of the mirror, doomed to relive this cycle forever." My heart raced. How could I choose between forgetting or sacrificing my own freedom? The visions of my family, pain and the secrets, began to swirl in my mind like a whirlwind. "No, I can't do this," I shouted, desperate. An intense light began to emanate from the mirror, almost blinding me. "You must decide, Emily. Time is running out." My grandmother's sister's voice grew more shrill, and the pressure in my chest intensified. I didn't know what to do. Deep down, part of me wanted to forget all the pain, the secrets, the weight of the truth. But another part longed to understand and free the woman who had suffered so much. The image of my grandmother flashed in my mind, her warm smile, but with a sad look that seemed to tell me she too carried the guilt. "Emily, Lucas shouted, and his voice brought me back to reality. He was by my side, his expression one of concern and love. "You're not alone. Fight against this." The last vision I had was of my grandmother, smiling but with tears in her eyes. And in that moment, I realized that the choice wasn't just about me. It was about my family, about the history we carried, and the truth that needed to be revealed. Before I could do anything, the mirror shone brightly, and a wave of light enveloped me. "Emily." Lucas's voice faded into darkness, and the world around me dissolved. The chapter ended there. The struggle for the truth was just beginning.